like they had COVID. And that is a whole different kettle of fish that has yet to be dealt with.
Okay, last thing, Dr. Milan. What does it mean when you say a scientist almost never knows? Because what everybody, like when I use any common sense in this environment, they always say, you're not a scientist, you're not a doctor, this is a science, and I'm a doctor. And I'm like, okay, but what does it mean? So everybody listening to this
so
today.
That's a logic trick, right? In debate
Yeah.
is this kind of referral to authority,
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a dirty trick, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And just to give you an example, I was on Tandy's radio broadcast yesterday, and he was just bending over backwards to make the point that he wasn't a doc. He was on the data. He knew everything, cold, okay? And he's not a dumb guy. I mean, you don't do what he does and be a dummy. Just like you don't do what you do and be a dummy. So just, these people that assert that they are authorities, but they don't recognize, and this gets to your question, they don't recognize the fact that in science, almost nothing's ever settled. We always have to have this dynamic back and forth. So I get the question from a German journalist right before we had this talk, and he's like, the Nobel Prize is coming up, and we interviewed you before, and can you answer these questions now, blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, you used to be less strident about the vaccines, and now you are coming out stronger about these concerns. And he says, well, what changed? Thinking that, I had a life trauma, it's because I got the jab and I had an adverse event. I said, what changed? The data changed.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot more about the adverse events. And so any of us, somebody who asserts, not naming any names, I am the science.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about. That's a red flag. That particular gentleman is an administrator. He is not a practicing physician.
Mm-hmm.
He does not practice science anymore. He is an administrator and a politician.
Who are you talking?
Very good at it.
Who are you talking about right now?
I'm talking about Mr. Fauci.
Okay.
Dr. Fauci, America's doctor, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci is not the science, right?
Yeah.
Dr. Fauci believes that it's okay to substitute his opinion for facts,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what's got us into this whole mess, in my opinion.
You don't like this
We
guy.
call it the benign. I've known this guy my whole life. Okay, my whole professional life, I've been dealing with this guy and watching what he does. Just wait till you see Bobby Kennedy's book, okay? It's going to open your eyes. Tony Fauci is not benign. He is an incredibly aggressive competitor. Okay, incredibly aggressive bureaucrat.
Mm-hmm.
You understand, if you're in business, what I'm talking about. He's no holds barred and has been his whole life. Problem is, a lot of times he's wrong, and he won't go back on it. He does all kinds of jabs and jives and moves about and deflects and all this other kind of stuff. He doesn't come clean.
Yeah, and he's been right. He's been right.
You got to be willing. You got to be willing to say, I was wrong about that.
Yeah.
The data changed. I got to change my position.
And he's been connected to at least 5 administrations. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, and every time there's a turnover, we're all like, is Tony going to retire this time?
Yeah, and then his wife,
guys.
if I understand this, his wife
Yeah.
runs the NIH.
No, she runs bioethics for the NIH.
Bioethics, which we started with, by the way.
Yeah. Unless you think Francis Collins is his wife, and we won't go there. Francis Collins is the director of NIH, so ostensibly he's Tony's boss, but the truth is Tony gets his money as a line item from Congress, and Francis has a much smaller budget than Tony does.
Wow.
So good to know.
Okay. Look, hey, I don't want to. It's the hour and 20 minutes you've given me. I don't want to abuse your time, and I really, really appreciate it. I need you to
had fun.
Give me another 40 minutes one night, all right? And because I got about 2,000 people in here that are raising their hand saying I got a question for him, and I think it would be a lot of fun, different than just an interview. They'd be popping in and just hammering you with everything.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I thank them for their interest and enthusiasm. But if they see me on the street, no selfies, please.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
I can't hardly move around in Europe anymore.
And if they want a selfie, do you want a masked or unmasked?
Everybody wants it unmasked.
Yeah, of course.
It's okay with me because I've had the jabs and I've had the infection, so I'm good to go.
Dr. Malone, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Be good.
Okay. All right, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Robert Malone, American virologist and immunologist. He's focused on mRNA technology. Hope you guys found this useful for yourself, your families, your offices. We are hiring at Grant Cardone Enterprises. You do not have to be vaccinated to be hired here to work here. And you guys on Clubhouse, man, I'll get this guy on a Clubhouse one night. It'll be freaking monster. There's been more people in this Clubhouse right now than I have on YouTube and Facebook combined. What would you guys have asked, by the way?
I was just hoping to hear a summary for those of us, because you got a lot of people in the room. I don't know that everybody was here from the very beginning. Is it possible to do like a bullet points of his conclusions or points that are like 3 or 4 things?
Yeah, he's actually watching here in the background. I don't know if he's got a second for me, but you guys can write GrantCardone.com.
Well, okay, so here's the bullet.
Yeah,
the bullet points.
bullet points. Give me the bullet points. Here he is.
Number one, think for yourself.
Think for yourself.
Okay, I'm putting out paper after paper, the primary literature, and key information through my Twitter feed. Now, Twitter's not a perfect platform, but at RW Malone MD
At
for Twitter,
RW Malone
and
MD.
and you'll find all kinds of information there. Read it and think for yourself. Number two, there's the other day CNN was discouraging people from doing their own diligence on vaccines. I disagree. I think you're all smart enough to make your own decisions. Number three, don't let them bully you into doing something with your body that you don't want to do. You know, I'm making some hard choices. I'm having to take some hits, and it's up to you. But there are employers out there that don't feel like they need to go along with this mandate, and seek them out. You know, we don't have enough employees generally to staff our companies.
Exactly.
And that means that for workers and quality personnel, there's other options to go with, like the company that you just heard about. Let's see, what's the next one? Vaccines make sense for the people at high risk currently. Until we know more and it's more clear about adverse events, don't think that I'm anti-vaccine. Don't be anti-vaccine. Be smart. Okay, be smart about it.
What was
Use
this
vaccine if you're at high risk?
Yeah, was this rushed though? In your estimation, was this vaccine rushed compared to other?
Absolutely. No question. It always takes a decade or more to get a vaccine out. Typically, we want at least 2 years of follow-up after phase 3, which is at least 3,000 subjects, to make sure we don't have autoimmune and other things. All that stuff got rushed, and what are we finding out? Oh, autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other things.
And then why do they say, oh yeah, but why do they go back and then say, oh yeah, but they've really been testing this for 20 years? I'm like, have you heard?
That's false.
Yeah, that's false.
Not this tech. Okay, this tech was bottled up. The reason why it took so long is because Merck and Vital held all the patents that blocked everybody for 20 years. Nobody's been able to develop this tech until the last 10 years, even though I invented it in the 80s. It's been all bottled up with patents.
Yeah.
So it's never been deployed at this level.
Uh-huh.
And adenoviral vectors never deployed at this level.
Omar, what was your question?
So whoever's saying that is just not in touch with them.
Is saying that his PCR test was being used inappropriately to diagnose COVID.
This gentleman's asking. Say it again, Omar.
What is his thoughts on Carrie Mullis being is saying that his technology is being used inappropriately to misdiagnose COVID.
He's saying the PCR test was used inappropriately to misdiagnose. Is there any truth to that?
So Corey, bless his heart, didn't actually say that because he passed away before this outbreak, so he couldn't have said it.
Oh wow!
But he did say that Tony Fauci is a liar, and he did say that PCR technology was being used inappropriately.
Wow!
Those are true. That he did say those things. Okay. And his point is that PCR is not a quantitative test, and you have to be very careful how you use it. PCR is another big hammer, okay? And you got to use that hammer smart. And he was making the point that people aren't respecting the limitations of technology, and he's right.
So what do you think is the agenda here? Like, what if there was an agenda? What is it?
That is, I can tell you, having just spent 2 weeks in Europe, everybody all over, and all these podcasts I do, everybody's asking that question.
Yeah.
What the heck is going on here? And one thing I can say, and you know this from being in the financial business, we're in a situation to think about Pfizer and Moderna and GSK and J&J and the Wall Street Journal, well, I should say the New York Times and the Washington Post and all of these companies and Google and Facebook, to think of them as all independent entities that for some reason are all having a common message is false. Mm-hmm. There are 4 major investment firms that basically own everything. And it's better to think about all these companies as divisions of a larger corporation.
Yeah.
That's how they behave. They're all harmonized in their messaging and their strategy and everything else. I was asked a question in Portugal when I was there about a fascinating group, about 50 people, politicians, lawyers, influencers, healthcare people, about how much money Pfizer's making, what their profit is, and is that the big incentive? I said, no, guys, you got to pay attention. The profit is a tiny fraction. You got to look at the market cap. Okay, that's where the money is.
Right.
Okay, and so there's a well-refined, for those that are investors in your community, there's a well-developed strategy that the momentum traders play off of, but so do the pharma CEOs. It's called pump and dump. And what you do is you get a shelf offering, you park it, wait for the next outbreak, you announce that you're developing a product for that, whether it's a drug or a vaccine, your stock starts popping, and you throw your shelf offering into that fire as it's going up, and it never matters whether or not you actually make the product. You've already got the cash.
Right.
And no one can draw it back. Then you do a reverse split and, wash, rinse, repeat. Get smart. That's what's going on in all kinds of levels. And is it the Klaus Schwab Great Reset, all that kind of stuff? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I said, those guys don't talk to me. But is it? There's a fascinating interview at Whistler or someplace like that with Bill Gates, where he sits down with a reporter and he brags that he's made a 20-fold return on investment on all the vaccine company investments he's made. Everybody thinks that Bill Gates is such a nice guy and he's giving out so much money. No, he's made a ton of money off of this outbreak. Okay? I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of big money is making hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
And I also know that the amount of money coming into the RNA vaccine business and RNA as a drug business is enormous. A friend of mine just sold his North Dakota company called Aldevron that he's built up over the last 30 years. I've ventured him from time to time. His name's Michael Chambers. Really nice guy, total straight arrow. Key to the supply chain for both Moderna and Pfizer, and he sold it for 9.6 B.
Wow.
Not bad.
So let me ask you, because the phenomenon that's happening in this pandemic, if you will, that's different than any other time in history, is social media and transparency and people, audiences, and me doing what I'm doing right now until YouTube shuts my channel down or whatever might happen. How do you think that plays out in this thing? If there is something hidden, something not being done correctly, how does social media play a positive influence in this story unfolding?
I think so. One of the great things for me is, after Brett Weinstein in particular, I got thrown into the podcast world. And I'd done a couple podcasts before then, but I had no idea what it was about. You guys are pirate radio. You're revolutionizing media. And the big boys just haven't figured out how to own you yet.
Right.
That'll happen. But right now, it's like the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
Podcast is disruptive technology for media. I'm amazed.
It's crazy.
And when it became clear to my wife and I that we were going to get, bent over a log, let's say, by mainstream media, and I was going to get written out of history, we said, we got to go. There's no choice. We have to go to alt media.
Yeah.
And we're going to go podcast and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely the right decision.
Yeah.
People all over the world, I cannot tell you how mind-bending it is to have the kind of reception that I had in Europe.
Yeah. No, I trust me.
never expected
You'll be even more famous after this interview today. Yeah. What is it, Jonathan?
So you guys are disruptive for sure.
Yes, doctor. If the vaccine is saving lives.
Is the vaccine saving lives? There's a pro-vaxxer Jonathan wants to
Saving
know.
lives. Yes, I believe so. I've said this repeatedly. In the high-risk people, the evidence is clear that it has saved lives.
Yeah.
Although that is in fluctuation right now. Based on the available data, it looks like it saved many, many lives in the high-risk people. And that's why I support it.
Do you believe
those groups?
Do you believe that the numbers that come from hospitals, or I never see a real source on this, but that the hospitals are loaded with unvaccinated? Do you think that data is true?
No, that's false. That is a false need. And it's really clear. So the problem is that all the data here in the States is compromised.
It's skewed,
and you have to go to the UK and to the Scandinavian databases and to the Israeli database.
Do you?
And in those cases, it's clear that we're having a very large fraction, and unfortunately, it's an increasing fraction of vaccinated that are having severe hospitalization and death.
So do you believe that the UK has given up on their vaccine passport? Do you believe that the United States will give up on this push to mandate for jobs and this passport vaccine thing?
I can't predict what the Biden administration is going to do. They're out of control. They're no longer tethered to logic and reality. I do believe that if they stay on this course, they are going to get a whipping in the next election.
1,000.
And I do believe that there's a reasonable chance, and I'm not endorsing Ron DeSantis. I think there's a reasonable chance that Ron DeSantis can be the next president.
Wow. Wow. Okay, look, I'm going to let you go, all right? Find a night to give me 45 minutes. I guarantee there'll be 10,000 people sitting on a clubhouse. Thank you so much, Doctor. Okay, appreciate it. That was awesome, man. That was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and appreciate you being here. Real quick, what would you guys have asked him? What would you guys have asked him that I didn't?
Please